Hey everyone, this is Roman Prokopchuk, and this is the Digital Savage Experience podcast. Today I have with me Jerry Abiog. Jerry is the co-founder of Standard Insights, an AI as a service growth marketing platform that helps businesses execute data-driven omni-channel campaigns. Thank you for joining me today.
Hey, Roman, thanks for having me. I love that name, Digital Savage. I heard that a lot in jiu-jitsu, so love that name. Rings a bell.
Thank you. I appreciate it, and thanks for stopping by today. So tell me a
Yeah,
little bit about your journey. How did you get to where you are today and co-founding the company?
graduated college in the mid-90s. I'm 48 years old, so I have roughly 25 years in sales marketing experience. Had my last corporate job around 2010, 2011, so it's going on 10 years out now since I've been on my own. When I left the corporate world, started my own business with helping software companies with sales and marketing initiatives. So along the way, I've had some awesome clients that have had successful exits. And the one thing that got me to my journey right now and co-founding this company, Standard Insights, was actually started from a failure from one of my clients. And so this was going back 4 or 5 years ago. This client brought me on to help with sales and marketing initiatives. It was an AI and machine learning startup, but it went off the rails. I mean, we had $1 million in funding and it didn't go anywhere. We couldn't even get, any customers onboarded. That's how bad and, how much of a failure it was. But through failure, they say, comes growth. And I learned two things at that point in time. Number one, doesn't matter what technology you are selling or promoting, but if it's not easy to use, intuitive, no one's going to buy it. I mean, you could have the best idea in the world, but if no one's buying your technology, doesn't mean anything. And number two, I didn't realize it back then, but there was something that was bubbling beneath the surface with regards to AI and machine learning technologies. And now there's some studies that indicate that it's going to be a $400 billion industry in 5 years. So back then, if you were to talk to someone about AI, maybe 2 out of 10, 2 or 3 people may have heard of it. Now it's up to 6 and 7. And given the light of what's going on right now in the whole world, that's even going to grow. So 2 years ago, through serendipitous events, I met my future co-founder, who's living in India, but he was visiting here in Atlanta. He used to live here. He used to work for a Fortune 50 company. Met him through mutual friends. He pitched me this idea. Thought there was something there, something good. Took it out to a trade show, outdoor retail in Colorado. Came back to Atlanta. Had our first trial customers, and we've been off to the races ever since. This was 2 years ago.
It's awesome, and I think you're right about kind of the more in the spotlight of AI, even with the whole pandemic thing and
Yeah.
incorporations of AI in different functions to improve and better your business, especially when everybody is remote. I actually read an article on LinkedIn this morning in terms of AI chatbots replacing a lot of call centers in this
Mm-hmm.
common crisis. And obviously there's so many applications. I actually use a AI platform to treat audio for my show. So it's
Yeah.
having kind of an audio engineer where it goes and treats and has algorithms where it meets kind of professional standards in that sense, and basically saves me that task in terms of outsourcing the audio.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, those are one of the benefits of AI. It just helps. Doesn't matter what you do. I mean, it can be applied to a bunch of different things, but it just helps make whatever task you assign it better.
Yeah, I agree. So what are some of the ways that the platform kind of helps businesses?
Yeah. So one of the ways, number one, it helps businesses execute data-driven campaigns, whether that's in email, text, and social media. So in essence, we help businesses run campaigns based on science instead of best guess. And as we're seeing right now, given what the world is experiencing, that we're learning to act and respond to things based on data, because the data it's not lying. Yeah, we're humans, and we tend to gravitate towards what makes us feel better, but that doesn't always solve problems, or in this case, drive sales for your business. I mean, you have to look at the data, what's made you successful in the past, and what's going to make you successful in the future.
Yeah, I agree. And in some cases, is it obviously a supplement for existing running campaigns, or could this also replace some of the kind of internal functions and maybe internal roles at a company in terms of a digital marketing department?
Yeah, it's either or. And what we like to help companies with, I mean, there's a lot of awesome data tools out there, but if you just have data sitting in the garage, if you have a car just sitting in the garage and never drive it anywhere, doesn't really mean anything. So what we help companies with is not only the analysis part, but on the other side, the execution under one roof, under one platform.
That's awesome. So, what motivates you to succeed?
I mean, just to get better each and every day, whether it's personal life or professional life.
Yeah, I think it's a ever changing, kind of growing aspect. I think the biggest battle is against yourself. People often
Yeah.
compare themselves to those around them in terms of other companies, other founders, co-founders, different situations, personally and professionally. But at the end of the day, it's what you can do to improve yourself and grow as a person, both professionally and personally.
Yeah, it's easier said than done. I mean, I'll be honest. In my younger days, it's like my what I thought competitive meant or getting better meant was being the other guy. So I dabbled in things like endurance races, Ironmans, and ultras. Is like, okay, can I beat the other guy? Or in jiu-jitsu, can I beat the other guy? And I think for me, and I'm not always perfect, that as you get older and learn more, it's about bettering yourself. It's not always beating the competition. Hey, what other AI tools are out there? I mean, obviously we study our competitors, but if we can make things better for our platform, and in turn that helps out our customers, helps them grow. So it's about, at the end of the day, it's making yourself better, what you can control.
Yeah, I mean, it's you versus you, and like you said, it's improving yourself. And like you said, it's easier said than done because there's a lot of shiny things around you, especially in social media. People, in terms of kind of promoting their accolades or kind of the highlight reel of their life, and you
Right.
kind of get drawn into that as a human being. I mean, everybody kind of has that consciousness in terms of, what am I doing right or wrong? Why is this person ahead of me? But it's a constant kind of reset mentally to, you're on your own road and your own journey, and regardless if you're taking a big step or a small step, as long as you're
Yeah.
bettering yourself. And like you said, in terms of a business, if you have a product, a software, making it better for the end user and making the pain points an end user is facing a lot smoother, and saving them time and adding kind of to that bottom line as well.
Yeah, how our software looked like when we first started 2 years ago was different than last year. And I'm willing to bet that how our software looks like today will be different a year from now.
Yeah, I agree. And I think companies over time, if you look at the kind of the Fortune 100 over the last maybe 50, 60 years, majority of them aren't in it anymore because, they either came up with something or had a product and thought they were the biggest and best, and kind of got into a complacent kind of mindset and didn't
Right.
really innovate. And then people swooped in that did it better or faster, and kind of they disappeared over time.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to take a look, last time we faced something major was the Great Recession, right? 2008, 2009, and what was popular back then? Blockbuster video. People would go rent movies, DVDs, and the small guy, Netflix, where you could pick at that point. It was just those DVD machines at the grocery store. But fast forward, 10 years later, what's everyone binging on right now during this situation? They're binging on Netflix. Where is Blockbuster? Well, they're nowhere to be found. It's just those little ideas that no one really thought about back then, 2008, 2009. If I said, hey, Roman, it's 2008. Hey, hey, don't rent that movie. Just pull it up online. You probably laugh at, but look where Netflix, where they are right now, and where's Blockbuster.
Yeah, and I think there's actually an example where Blockbuster was still kind of, top and Netflix started going into the market. Blockbuster had a chance, I believe, to buy Netflix and kind of laughed it off. And now I
Yeah,
think there's one Blockbuster video
left.
left somewhere
Yeah,
in like the Midwest or somewhere. And
yeah,
it's like you said, same thing with kind of Toys R Us. It was a, household name. They didn't innovate. They didn't really have a, that big of an e-commerce presence. They didn't present an experience in the stores or capitalize on the things that they were selling. And people went to Walmart, Amazon, online, and they pretty
yeah.
much disappeared. So if you don't innovate, people move on and go elsewhere.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, you made a good point. If they don't innovate, your company's going to be toast. I think we're seeing some sort of another transformation, if you will, with regards to tech space, like the ability to work from home, changing, moving things from the server to the cloud, and then in my case, AI tools to help drive up your marketing and sales.
Yeah, and I think overall, all of that is positive because now with other companies, I think I heard Twitter is letting people work remotely almost 100% of the time, even after this whole pandemic, work from
Yeah,
home, stay-at-home orders subsides, and that actually, in my opinion, opens up to a lot greater talent pools. So
yeah,
often, if a company is headquartered in New York, usually they'll have someone work 3 4 maybe 2 days in Manhattan or whatever in New York
yeah,
City, and then maybe travel or work from home. But now for a role that is coming out of maybe a headquarters office in New York, you can find somebody in Canada, Mexico, Brazil at competitive rates, and maybe
yeah.
even of a higher talent pool than you would focusing on a specific geographic area.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. There was an article the other day that with the real estate prices and everything that's going on in the Bay Area, it's going to be a tectonic shift where now these tech workers don't have to live in the Bay Area. I mean, they could live, as you mentioned, around the country in cheaper areas or even around the globe. So yeah, it's going to be force businesses and companies to think how they're doing their current business model.
Yeah, and it's like the behavior change based on this, global event. Like you mentioned, the recession. So I
Mm-hmm.
pretty much got into digital marketing as a result of that recession. I
Yeah,
graduated with a degree in criminal justice, and everybody froze hiring. And I was presented an opportunity and pivoted and ran with it ever since, and got a lot of opportunities in that field, founded my
yeah,
own company, and so on and so forth. So I think a lot of people are still panicking on what's going to be next, but just utilizing this time to innovate, grow, and come out of it with added value or give value to people that are in kind of a fear state. There's at least 10 to 12 kind of unicorn companies that came out of that recession that are now billion-dollar companies, and they'll be during this pandemic as well. So just people taking the opportunity and having kind of the courage to step forward and run with it.
yeah. And you're absolutely right. I mean, I think now we're like 2 months in, maybe 2.5, depending on where you live. But 2 months ago in March, it was more maybe fear-based. Okay, what's going on now? But now, 2 months in, it's like, hey, we've got to do something. What are we going to do? And even if you look on LinkedIn, the messaging has changed. That hey, it's not so much staying in bed, covers over your face, but now it's people are starting to, all right, what's going on? How can we do things different? How can we improve and take advantage of this situation?
Yeah, I agree. So, what's one weakness you may have seen in yourself in the past that you've turned around and utilized as a strength today?
I mean, for myself, it's balance. I'm still working on it. Just my mentality, right? All right, I'll work, 24/7, but to accomplish my goals. But realizing, as you get older, this isn't my entire life, right? Hey, I've got to spend time with my better half, and be present. when, especially in weekday nights and, on the weekends. But I'd say finding balance is not quite a strength yet, but I'm getting better.
Yeah, and
This
that
time
yeah,
all consuming. Yeah.
yeah, and it's hard to do. I mean, people often talk about that work-life balance, but there's never a 50-50 even
Hmm.
split. You always have to sacrifice either professionally or personally and move that kind of weight in one direction or another and see what actually works for you. Your working environment, like you said, maybe now you work from home a lot where you had an office, so that frees up time during the day to do certain things, spend
Yeah.
time together on a lunch break because now you're at home, or go for a
Yeah.
walk, or
Yep.
start off your day together instead of having to commute. So there's these
Correct.
things that are, brought about by kind of the changing times and the climate we're in,
Hmm.
and just in general the situation. I think there's no kind of right answer for that. I think it's what's right for you as an individual at that current time. So
Yeah.
maybe, 10-20 years ago, you had a different mindset in terms of what was important to you or who you had in your life or what the goals were. And obviously
Right.
that's not a set target, that's a moving target, and it changes with priorities, things that happen in your
Yeah.
life, and your goals. You may actually sell this company and move on to another project or
Yeah.
whatever, or start another company, and it's just kind of defined but what you're currently, what your current life is and what you're actually handling.
And you said something, a moving target. So it's whether it's in business or life, things are always a moving target. You do your best to anticipate and prioritize and execute the target in front of you, but realize that it's not always set in stone, that you may have to make some adjustments here and there.
Yep, I agree. And it's one of those things you have to either adjust professionally or personally and
Yeah.
figure out. Sometimes, obviously, if you go super hard professionally, you get burned out. A lot of
Correct.
the time, you can figure out things where you can automate and outsource or find somebody to take up things that are redundancies that are,
Yeah.
ongoing, or tasks that happen over and over again, where you can focus kind of on the high level tactical strategic things that usually people are passionate about as well, and free up time that way.
Yeah. So one thing that, and speaking of, adjusting. So this time last year, if you were to have talked to me, I could have presented you, one of our apps. Like, hey, Roman, what it is? It's a contactless menu diner app where you can walk into a restaurant or a particular restaurant. You can download their menu link and order, so you don't have to look at a menu. And I presented that to a few folks last year. It's like, yeah, that sounds great, but the cost, and people like holding something in their hands. But a year later, a lot of the rules are disposable menus. What are you going to do? And then if you take a look on the other side, Uber Eats, they're charging, all these other companies that have been out there charging 25-30% of the menu item, and the restaurant owners don't own their data. So we took that platform that was literally in our proverbial garage, and now we're rolling it out. So if you're a restaurant owner, your patrons come in, whether they order online or in the restaurant, they download the link or scan the barcode, and the menu's there on your phone. You make the order, you pay, and then eventually you'll get Amazon-like predictions on menu items to order. So even if you have an idea that it didn't take, don't be afraid to try and just build it or go after it. But now, that was sitting in a garage. Now, a year later, we're rolling it out. Now it's relevant.
Yeah, sometimes you shelf things like
Mhm.
ideas or certain products or platforms, and then the time becomes right. So,
Yeah.
like abandoning it altogether, I mean, an idea may be a little ahead of itself and not,
Yeah.
mature yet, but taking it to a mature state, and then when it's ready, if you need to pivot. But like you said, something has been waiting and the right kind of climate came about to, release it or make it more applicable, and then you kind of, meet the needs of the current demand.
Yeah. You said pivot, and that's what we did. And when, like, okay, the whole world is shutting down. Oh my gosh, we do something with restaurants. And then as the rules like came out when the restaurants were beginning to open up, the social distancing and, contactless menu. Yeah. So, yeah, you're right. Always have to pivot. pivot to the situation, and everything's a moving target.
Yeah, and don't be afraid to pivot, and don't be afraid to even pivot out of an idea. So
Yeah,
sometimes you run with an idea or something long enough and you've had the same result, it hasn't adjusted, you take those learnings and you move or build on it to something else as well.
yeah, absolutely.
So, what's one piece of advice you may have for the audience, personal or professional?
I'd say do something that challenges you each and every day, that makes you uncomfortable. Could be, both professionally and personally. I mean, for myself, during the last 2 months, I, I took up painting and read more. And then, in my 40s, in my early 40s, I took up jujitsu. Now I have my blue belt, and that's when you're a 42-year-old male and you're doing jujitsu and going up against savages, that are mid 20s. I was very uncomfortable, but you learn to overcome and you learn to adjust. I think my mindset was, hey, I'm not going to beat an athletic 25-year-old that lifts all the time and works out all the time. But if I can maybe stop them from, if I could, not tap out or whatever it may be. But yeah, just set small incremental goals, for yourself, whether it's professionally or personally. So yeah, do something that makes you uncomfortable each and every day.
Yeah, and I think a lot of like kind of the greatest innovations also come out of a level of uncomfort because
Yeah,
it's not in your traditional kind of, habit. You have to kind of get out of that sometimes to
yeah,
grow or reach a level of success or, founding a company. I think it's getting out of that initial habit because you're
yeah,
afraid. The human wants to be comfortable, be safe. And when something is presented outside of that, you start second guessing yourself and why am I doing this? Sometimes it's a fear. So for me, it's heights and I went skydiving. Sometimes
awesome.
it's something in terms of business. Obviously, let's say leaving a full time job, starting something yourself, or pivoting into another role. So all those fears exist, I think, subconsciously. But that biggest first step, when you do take it, you realize, that fear wasn't necessarily kind of realistic. And
Yeah,
9 times out of 10 or a large percentage, you get something positive out of it. And if you don't, at least take something and learn from it to apply to something else in the future.
yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, you're always learning, you're always growing, no matter how young or old you are.
Yeah, I agree. So I really appreciate you stopping by today. Can you let the audience know how they can find you?
Yeah, so real simple. You can find me on LinkedIn, Jerry Abiog. It's Standard Insights. I should be the only one there. Or you can just reach out to me on email. It's JERRY at standardinsights.io. And I'd love to, show you the platform.
Awesome. Thanks again for stopping by.
Hey, thanks for having me.